Hi, hello. We are back. It was quite a time last week when we were on SBC. So everybody, hope you are refreshed. You are back at the work. You have already went through the backlog. You already went through the emails, and you are up and running with full energy because this is iGaming Accent brought to you by SBC Eurasia. And today I have a wonderful guest, Simon Westbury, that was just appointed to 1xBet as a strategic advisor. He will tell much more about his role and what he's doing and what 1xBet is doing. But all in all, let's just start. Simon, how are you feeling? How was the conference for you? Have you attended, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, it was good. I think I'm a bit inadequate from that introduction because I've not done any of the things that you've said. I've not caught up on sleep. I've not done all my email follows up, and I'm not back with the energy I should be. But hopefully after this podcast, I will be. I mean, what can you say about that show? I mean, you just have to say they lived up to the tagline. It was the greatest show in gaming. Might get in trouble for saying this. I'd probably say it's the most complete show. From the football on the Monday night and the leaders on Monday.
You were on the match as well?
Yeah, I was lucky. Raz put me in the director's box. And the power of the 1x bet brand managed to get me into the Legends changing room at the end of the match. So I got some photos of some of my idols, and yeah, it was good.
You have signed T-shirts as well already hanging
No, to
around
be fair, they
somewhere?
were getting undressed as I was in there, so the t-shirts were flying around. I didn't really want to hang around too long, so I got my photos, I got myself out of there, but and then we went to Tuesday, where we had a really full-on day launching our player protection report for Western Europe, which I'm sure we'll come to a bit later. I did a panel on Wednesday, and obviously, delighted to pick up the second award in 3 months for 1xBet at the very prestigious SBC Awards. Full on, still sleeping, still
Still,
doing my email catch-ups, but yeah, what a show.
the good thing is that you didn't get the flu because I heard from the friends that were attending that, like, on every conference there is some kind of virus going around, and when people go back to their countries, like, something happens, and I've heard about that. So this is still good, even though you didn't went through everything right now. Believe me, you are in much better shape rather than I've seen from our experiences on demos and on follow-up calls, how people are feeling and how they do it. So before we jump
Maybe
into
we could sponsor that. Someone could sponsor that.
yeah,
The post medicine for shows with post flu
yeah.
medicine. I don't know.
By the way, I remember that some companies thought through and they brought a recovery pack on a second day, and there was a recovery pack with the Alka-Seltzer headache removal.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I mean, I'm a very sensible human now. I would never be out drinking past a
No, me
certain
too,
time. So,
me too.
oh,
Only on
those
last day.
days are gone.
Only on last day.
Even the last day, I was that tired. It was 1 o'clock. I think I was back in the hotel.
I
I'm getting too old.
Yeah, to be honest, I have a code of conduct. I don't touch the alcohol until everything is wrapped up, like until the final meeting is wrapped up. After that, you will see me with the gin tonic in my hand. But let's just have a hard stop here regarding what happened last week, because we will touch upon that and
Uh-huh.
we'll go back to that. First of all, when I'm starting, I really want always to introduce my guest to the public, because everybody has a different types of experience and everybody has some kind of experience regarding getting into the iGaming. So what I'm wondering is, how did the hell did you end up in iGaming, and is it there a story about it, and where did you start it to work?
Yeah, I mean, it was luck. I mean, honestly, it was pure luck. Back in 2007 or 8, I never really remember. I think it was 2007. I was in working with a company called Terrapin, doing conferences. I'd just been doing oil and gas conferences. Came back from living in Dubai, worked for Terrapin, and we were doing pension. I was doing financial conferences, and I just started working on a pension fund world Germany or something equally exciting as that, as you can imagine. And literally, I got called into the office, and me, with my personality, getting called into the office by the MDs, a bit like going into ski to see the headmaster. It was never a good thing. But on this occasion, it was a good thing. They asked me to take over the running of an event that was called Gaming Executive Summit.
Mm-hmm.
The premise of the event was literally no more than 200 people in the room, but
Mm-hmm.
everyone was a decision maker. It was done in I would say it was done in partnership with Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank basically outsourced the running of that conference to us for a nice financial benefit, which was a nice bonus for me every year. But by the by, I mean, I just enjoyed the industry. I met the guy from Deutsche Bank after half an hour. And I always remember giving him a plastic water cup when he'd come from his offices. In the in the financial district of London, and he come from Liverpool Street, I think it was. And I give him a plastic cup. He looked pretty aghast at this plastic cup, and honestly, I was a bit embarrassed to give him it, but didn't have any choice. So, and it grew from there. I did the event in the July, and I just remember people like Tom Hall doing some fantastic presentations. Carrie Klein from Bwin did this great presentation on the good, the bad, and the ugly of the gaming industry, and she wasn't talking about the people in the room. And then we had this great panel with, it was called the C-Level Panel, and Mitch Garber had just left 888 the week before, and, the conference producer, you're like, oh God, CEO left, how do I run this conference? But Jim Ryan stepped in, and I think that really showed a lot about the industry running conferences. The guy came in at a week's notice, and I always tell the story, and forgive me for repeating myself, but for those that don't know,
I
I was
don't
stood at the
know. So
bar. We finished at 3 o'clock on the first day. There was round tables, but the round tables went to the bar. And one of my very good friends, probably my mentor in the industry, Roger Withers, ordered everyone a drink in the bar. So that's very generous of him. But he actually signed it to Warwick Bartlett's room. And, what I learned from that was when Warwick realised that the drink, and it was quite a substantial round, had been signed to his room, he didn't complain. He just laughed and was kind of like, we'll get on with it. It was just different in those times. It was fun, and I just got into it that way. Progressed into doing a year in payments, and then went on to the sexy side, as they call it, the casino platform side, as it was then, growing into ultimately selling a full platform.
okay. So I think that your entry was much fun because like you entered through the right, let's say, right people at right place. Because what I imagine from executive summit, all the decision makers would be there, and you would know every, let's say, major player in the industry and what they are doing. And when you get accustomed to, when you have a drink with them, you understood what people are behind those big brands that run everyday shows, and they run the country's like biggest casinos and online operations. So that was like a great entry. You mentioned a mentor, so I will just jump quickly on that part. So why did you consider him a mentor, and what was the relationship between you and your mentor? So what you learned, what was it like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you make a good point about the people in the room at those conferences. I remember being in the bar one day, and actually it was when, believe it or not, Bwin and Betfair were the companies that were meant to merge, and then they had a drink and it was Bwin Party, and I remember seeing the advisory bank, I won't name names, like getting a bit worried because he couldn't advise both sides, so he had to make a decision, and that's how the Bwin Party merger came about in the bar in the Euro Towers in Madrid. But no, I think, look, in terms of mentorship, when I first did the conference, everyone spoke about Roger as someone you needed to know. And, back in the late 2000s, I wasn't probably as finessed as I am now. And I just walked up to Roger and I said, I've been told I need to get to know you. And he was like, why the devil's that? And it grew from there. And it grew into a friendship, and it grew into, going into this big world of corporate finance that was also happening around the time of gaming, where he was teaching me in a way how to dress, how to present myself, how to host a table. And, for a guy from North London, it was a bit of a scary world at times. And he guided me, and then from that point, he was just always there in my career. He never made it easy for me. He was always there as a sounding board. I still speak to him now. He's always saying he's retired. I'm not sure if he is retired. I meet him for a quarterly lunch, and it says a lot about him. We always used to go to some really, really perceived nice restaurants in London, but now we meet in a pub just by St Pancras Station. So there's no airs and graces to it. We have a beer and we have normally some English fish and chips or something in a pub and get on with it. So yeah, I'm eternally grateful for him. He was, yeah, as I said, never made it easy, became a friend, but also gave me the right words at the right time during my career when I was looking at career moves, etc. He gave me a different perspective.
I think that that's why mentors are there. So even though they help us, they put us through hell as well. And at some point, we have to keep up with everything what they say, not whatever they say, but what they say. At least like to consider their perspective, because when you have a mentor, it somehow guides you towards the right directions and right things. By the way, I think that when we were first making a podcast, It was like there were too many names on the table, and like iGaming accent at the same time became a joke inside like our production team because like everybody here has an accent. And today I have to mention that your accent is spot on. Like I remember all the years that I worked in Flutter and I was trying to understand all the before I learned to understand like Irish and England English like accent. But this is really good. Like this show is called The Right Things right now. Okay.
Yeah, I think if you don't mind me jumping in there, that's one of the reasons my accent means that I'm happily married because I think my wife only understands 50% of what I say. So that's probably, but that's what she says anyway. So that's probably why that, I'm still happily married.
I think I think that I could relate to that if I had that type of accent, and my wife would be always happy because she would catch only the words she would like, and she will be happy, and I would be happy as well.
Hey, maybe my wife's just being diplomatic. I know that even when we were working in the same company, people were going to her, can you translate Simon's accent? My wife's honest. There's a secret. Happy marriage, have a London accent. Wife will only understand 50% of what you say.
Yeah. By the way, I can tell you about the story that happened to me, and it's connected to accent. I have told this on this podcast, but that was a long time ago when we were talking about our backups. So we had an English guy. I will not name the exact guy who it was, but he wrote something to me like in Blabberish, like let's say, "Well, we met, we have to, and blah blah." And I read it, and from my understanding of English, from my all the years in college, all the years in school, like I understand that we had to stop, we had to prolong the promotion for another 1 month. So new month comes, and it's already 3 weeks, not 3 weeks, but 3 days into the new month, and this promotion is running, redesigned, all the words updated, all the marketing updated, and it runs like big numbers there. On the third day, when he arrived in the office, he was by the way away on vacation, and when he came back and he sees the promotion, he just writes on me on Slack like, "Wow, why is it still up?" And I'm like, "You said it should be up." And like we went back and front, and then we had a jury that entered the meeting room and tried to unlock and unpack what he has written to me in order to understand. Like it was really, really fun. By the way, not a big bucks were spent, but it was fun, and we learned lots of things to double ask the questions or triple ask the questions when something is having like let's say two meanings.
I think that's a good point, like, and I've learned that over the last 6 years of my career. And I don't like voice note because I don't always have my headphones, can't listen to them. But sometimes, when I write something, I totally agree. It can be read totally different way to what I mean. So sometimes, if I have time, I'll leave a voice message. But yeah, I mean, being clear in English is something we think we do naturally, and we don't always. And I know that because currently I'm trying to learn Armenian, and what I think is clear is not clear. And, in some ways, Armenian is actually easier and clearer. So I'm with you. I totally understand. And I think it's something, in this rushed world that we live in where everyone's a million miles an hour, it can happen easily.
Yeah. By the way, regarding Armenia and transferring you, like for you, I think that it was a big change, right? At some day you transferred from UK to Armenia, right? It was straight transfer, or you had like
No,
time
it was
to.
a gradual transfer. Luckily, I started coming back and forth to Armenia in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
It was coming, 2 weeks at a time, and then because of my role and success breeds success, my time, I was then managing a team of over 25 people at one point. So I ended up coming here more and more, and then it was like, why am I here? Why am I in the UK? I don't need to be here.
Mm-hmm.
When I got one of my promotions, it was constant, I had to come and live here. So it was a gradual process. I'm not saying when I made the final leap of moving here, much easier, but yeah, it was a gradual process. It wasn't in the plan, and I think we may come on to this talking about my career, but you have to commit to whatever you do, and I
Yeah.
probably overcommit. And one of my friends, an ex-footballer, actually said to me, Simon, I respect and admire you because whatever you do, you jump in two-footed and you just commit. And it's not something I thought of. To me, just moving here was a natural progression. And then obviously when I was moving here and living here, I got engaged. So, you know, contrary to what people may think, I didn't move here to get engaged. I got engaged once I was living here. So it was work that brought me here, but a byproduct of that job was that I met my wife. So I'm not complaining.
No complaints there. By the way, so one thing that I would love to ask is, can you name one thing that is really, really different regarding Armenia other than it, I like, what was the biggest difference for you from UK to Armenia? What is that thing that you found like you never did it when you were in UK and now you do it on a regular basis when you were in Armenia?
I think when we talk about that, I'm into on a physical level, it's boxing because I've taken up boxing since I've been here. Just because, as I say, I'm learning Armenian, but I'm not great yet. So team sports, etc., are a bit beyond me. So boxing is something I do, which I wouldn't do. I mean, in terms of the biggest difference I've noticed is yes, everyone's emotional, but if I have an argument with someone, it's left at the door, and I get on with it. But working in an environment, Armenian environment, everything you say things and again, I hope you get this. I remember saying in the office once, it's a very English saying, were you born in a barn? Because the guy didn't close the door to my office. Well, it's actually a polite way of saying, can you close the door in English, like a jokey.
Yeah.
The guy was storming back in my office. You can't say. I was like, I thought he was gonna hit me. I was like, mate, like, what's
This
going
is
on?
just,
Yeah, but that's just a slight thing. But I think here everything is taken personally, and it's not with me. Sometimes I was at work, they'd be like, "Hi, Simon, John," and whenever I saw Jan, I knew that was a problem coming. How are you? Can you approve this? And I just approved because I was in a meeting, and they were like, "Have I offended you?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
why no?
You didn't ask how I was. I was like, I suppose in business, it's quite transactional in the UK. You ask me to approve something, I approve it.
I don't
And you
need to
should be
know
happy.
about your family matters right now, right today,
Not in
right?
a bad way. I'll just be happy I got approval to get on with my job. But so, yeah, I think that was the biggest thing. You had to just be aware of everything was taken personally and dealing with complexes on an everyday level, which I didn't have and I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I felt that if I didn't know something and someone educated me on something, I was thankful. I found it quite different in Armenia. They have to argue with you to prove they're right, even when they may not be. And it's not about right or wrong. It's just the best advice I ever got was always ask the Armenian in a meeting who's quiet because he's the one who, or she is the one who knows the answer because they're
Uh-huh.
very proud and they expect you to ask them. The one who's
Okay.
talking doesn't know anything. But I might be wrong. That's just what I was
No, no,
told.
no. That is some lesson that for somebody might be very, very precious when they
I always found it to be true.
okay. Okay, nice. By the way, been uh I've been part of Armenia and let's say working there as well for my previous experience because our brand was there as well. And I visited a few times and culturally and historically, I'm Georgian, so we are quite close on different things. Of course, we don't agree on most of them, but we are close. Let's say like that. We always have like different topics to argue about, but all in all, quite a good people, quite emotional people, and quite, let's say, quite, how to say, quite a well-established country in iGaming as well. Like we see lots of different brands coming from Armenia and lots of big brands coming from Armenia as well. And that is always a good sign that iGaming there is big as well. And I don't remember, but I've seen one moment. I want to remember where I saw it. 1 in 5 Armenians work in iGaming, like from the young generation. Like 1 in 5 Armenians work in iGaming or something like that. I saw that statistic somewhere. I might be
That, that
wrong, but
that wouldn't surprise me. I'll be honest. I mean, if you look at it, I'm not going to name names because obviously that's just I want to be a bit
we can.
diplomatic here.
Maybe I can name. So Bad Construct is there, Digitain is there, Evolution Gaming is there. I just dropped the big names.
Yeah, I mean,
We
look,
can.
I think that the big two. I'll let you work out that who is because
Yeah.
I'm not working for either anymore. The big two, they both compete on LinkedIn who's paid more tax. But bar that, I think, and I've said this before, so I'm kind of repeating myself, but I think it's one of the only true democracies in the region, and I'm not criticizing
Yeah.
Georgia in that. I'm just talking about maybe other neighbours around us. And I think that as a society evolves in a democratic nature the iGaming industry and vegan and Vardan or Vardkas, Vartanyan and vegan at Betco have created a new social class within the gaming,
Yeah.
uh, through the gaming sector. And when we look at that, they're removing it benefits for mortgages and tax, and the vegan and Vartanyan have really promoted people into home ownership, earning good salaries, and maybe bridging the gap between rich and poor. And when I hear what Armenia was, how tough it was in the
Yeah, in
90s here.
19s, yeah.
You know, you've got to give it credit. And it's not just gaming. I mean, there's many things developed here, and you walk around central Yerevan, and one, it's very safe. Two, it's very family orientated. And I remember some time that I spent in the Middle East. They always called Lebanon the Paris of the Middle East. I think at times, especially in the summer, the cafe culture in Yerevan. Maybe I'm getting carried away. I don't know. You know, you
No, no,
could
no,
compare the
no, no, no.
Paris is the South Caucasus, but yeah, I mean, I like it here. And I think, you know, gaming has played an important role in the development of society because everyone thinks gaming this, gaming that, but they don't understand the developers, the product owners, the product managers, and different skill sets that have to come into gaming.
Yeah. So it's not just, let's say, too many types of expertise is needed in order to run big companies such as Big Two that we mentioned. So there are lots of different expertise, lots of different, let's say, people working there, and they are enjoying it, and they are getting a really good, let's say, matter of life. But let's leave Big Two in the past where they
Please.
are right now.
6 years
Yeah,
of my
yeah, yeah,
life.
yeah, yeah. Let's move to our where we are currently, where we are. OneXBet. OneXBet is one of the well-known brands, well-known in the industry. Challenger brand, all-around brand. We heard lots of stories, different types. For you, it was the, let's say, main decision. Why did you join the OneXBet? So what was your expectation when you were joining OneXBet?
I don't think it's necessarily expectation when I joined. I think when I was in conversations and I had joined, a lot of people had mentioned to me the risk I was taking, and I think we touched on this a bit,
Yeah,
you know, a few minutes ago. Whenever I do something, I jump in with both feet. To me, I didn't see risk. I saw opportunity, and the opportunity I genuinely saw was, as you mentioned, to work for a tier one company, one of the biggest companies in the B2C, but an existing tier one. You know, in my B2B life, I'd gone to companies that were maybe tier two or three and elevated them to a tier one level. But I'd never gone into a company that was tier one in that environment. I'd never gone into B2C, so there was an opportunity for me to grow and learn. But, you know, my overarching concept was fairness. You know, rightly or wrongly, I believe in fairness all my life. And I think the gaming press and the gaming industry found it easier to view OneXBet negatively for whatever reason.
yeah.
If we want to discuss that, we can discuss that. But I didn't think that was fair. I met the people, I spoke with the people, and I challenged them. I challenged my now colleagues on, is this true? Because if it's true, I've got a problem with it. And, you know, we sat down and we had a conversation. And what I found out was there was a penchant for negativity from people towards OneXBet, and I believe in fairness. And there was a real opportunity for me to give a big brand a voice and actually allow them to be heard. And I was convinced of OneXBet's desire to change. And by that, I don't mean change in their operations. I mean a change in engaging with the industry so that it wasn't so frosty, but you just didn't see spokesperson said on their press releases. There was a way for the industry to engage. And most importantly, I was told, you know, I was be given freedom to be myself,
Okay.
allowed to express myself. And, you know, touching on the points that we made in the first 3 months I've been there, there's no real emotion, there's no complexes, and there's no politics. It's just get on and do your work and look at the results and build to be successful. As I say, it's the first 3 months, so I don't want to get carried away, but it's a real breath
So
of
you
fresh air
already
for me.
But you already see the differences, and you already see the culture, what was there, what is there, right? So you already met that they're much more, how to say, much more goal oriented, much more result oriented rather than it was back then. So that is also the strange thing because
They're
we,
also very caring, if you allow me to jump in, because they was like, "Are you happy? Are you okay?" And when I took the role, they were like, "Are you sure you want one expert?" I was like, "Look, guys, if I'm representing you, I'm representing you." And when they asked me if I'm happy, my colleagues, I would say, "If you're happy, I'm happy." Because in a way, what I'm doing at the moment in challenging and speaking openly and bringing a different side of the story for one expert, you know, hasn't been done before. So it's a bit untangible as well. Okay, yes, I'm all over LinkedIn and, you know, in a way, I don't want this to sound arrogant. My personal reputation and brand that I bring to this to help one expert
huh?
is elevating it. And maybe it's gone a bit quicker than we all thought in terms of level of attention. But I will say, all those people that may have wanted to write negative stories, I've said, come and interview me, but not one of them's come. So that kind of tells me
That they
they
are
may not have the credibility behind their
credibility
story
or
that they
proof. Yeah.
claim.
Yeah.
So,
And by
again,
the
I say if you want to ask me, then ask me, no problem. Or
yeah,
other
that's good.
media.
That's good. That's good. So when you're open like that to anybody that is there to challenge one expert brand or you, and you are ready to sit down with anybody and talk about it and deep dive it, that already tells a story, like whoever is there, like whoever is going to reach out can reach out. You are well known on LinkedIn, so everybody knows your LinkedIn, so they can do it there and do it like easy way. By the way, what is, let's say, I wanted a funny way to ask this question, but I didn't think about it.
Okay,
But
go on.
what is the main reason or main role that you so what do you do? Like it would be the main thing. So what is your
Yeah, I mean,
number one thing to do as a in this position and in these shoes?
yeah, I mean, I think at the moment it's about engaging with the industry. And you mentioned my LinkedIn, the amount of casino providers, different kind of service providers in the industry that have reached out with me to me wanting to engage. So my role's going to evolve, and I've just talked about openness and coming out to the industry. There's something going to happen, which is a big announcement. We're just building up to that, and I wish I could tell you.
Yeah.
I just can't. So for this first point, it's getting to know my colleagues as well, learning to work with them in a positive way, understanding what the expectations are of me. But it's about engaging with the industry, and it's not just about the gaming industry. I was in Riga the other day before SBC Lisbon to work on the FIBA sports betting partnership that we have as the global betting partner of FIBA.
Mm,
But it's getting out there, clocking up the air miles and engaging.
okay.
That may seem a little bit flimsy, and I promise me it's not. As I mentioned previously, we are committed to more and more regulated markets. We've got over 35 licenses at the moment, and Western Europe's a focus for us. LATAM's a focus, and I have experience of working in regulated markets, understanding how those work, and also how to navigate some of the vagrancies of
Vague. Yeah. Vague.
intricacies, not vagrancies, intricacies of
Intricate.
what we do. So that's, what I'm doing at the moment. And, we launched the player protection report, as I mentioned, in Lisbon last week. And I think we're going to come and talk a bit more about lessons learned in the gaming space, but it's also applying some of those lessons I've learned over my career into it. But for
Yeah.
now, stage one, get out there, and just try and move the dial and show that we're here to talk. And we're not. I'm not scared of anything. And as I said to you, I see a great opportunity here to give one of the biggest gaming brands in the industry the
The
fair hearing it
treatment
deserves.
that it deserves. Okay. I will not jump into the report that you just mentioned because I heard something more interesting, like one or two sentences before. So you were in Riga talking at the FIFA World, FIBA. Yeah, FIBA. So basketball, one of my. Have you arrived to that? And also, like sponsorship has been on my table for too long. I worked in marketing and branding in my previous corporate job, so it was always on my table. Like were sponsoring different teams. By the way, we were sponsors of Georgian Basketball Association, and
Hmm.
Georgian. They are still sponsored by my previous employer, so Achabet. And this year we went through semifinals, almost like not quarterfinals, not
Almost
semi, almost.
quarterfinals, because I
Yeah,
had some Georgian colleagues with me hoping that they would have got to the semi-final standard there.
yeah, we played really, really bad about against Finland, but yeah, whatever it
Yeah,
is,
watching Finland against Germany as I did, you must have played bad, to be
yeah,
honest.
I could not even believe like we played whole like really, really bad through the group level, but then the spark was there, and like two of our players made more than like 20 points, and we went through there. So how did you end up with FIBA, and what's the, let's say, your vision regarding that sponsorship and what it should bring to the table to for one expert?
I think that you make a very good point about sports sponsorship. Where's the value in it? What is the ROI? And I think that kind of reminds me of when I was in the B2B world. The old argument of sales and marketing. What's marketing bringing, and what's sales is
Sales bring.
tangible. I think for us, it's not just FIBA. As you know, we relaunched. Well, we renewed, extended our partnership with PSG, and we announced that in Lisbon. And I probably lost any remaining dignity I have in the industry, jumping up and down playing some kind of virtual pinball game with Claude Makelele. But I think, we work with Barcelona and we do esports and we do varied sponsorships. And what that tells you is we're trying to appeal to different audiences in different markets. Obviously, we've got our license in Spain, but in terms of the basketball, it's for us doing something a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, geographically, if we look at that as a sport, it appeals, for want of a better phrase, this part of the world that I'm in, Georgia, Eastern Europe. And I'm not saying football's not popular, but FIBA and basketball is very popular here, as you just mentioned. I've seen your eyes light up talking about it. So it's a way to engage with our player base and our
Yeah.
customers. We've got our Serbian license recently. I know basketball's big in Serbia. It's a way to really continue growing, engaging with our customer. I'm not going to say it's a personalized experience, but it's not saying you have to like PSG or you have to like Barcelona. It's like, okay, this is a growing sport. And, I went to an American Catholic school run by American brothers, so I kind of had an understanding of basketball. And going to Riga, I didn't expect the standard to be the standard it was. I was amazed. There's some NBA stars on the show. So I think with any kind of sports sponsorship, it's kind of twofold. One, you want to build your brand because you want to show the power of your brand to give your customers trust in your brand.
Uh-huh.
But outside of that, you want to commit to the global development of the sport from a
Yeah.
grassroots level up to the main level. Now, we understand that, being a betting company, we're not going to be on, under 18 t-shirts or anything like that. That's not what we're doing. But at the end of the day, if you invest at the top level of the sport, hopefully it filters down. So it's kind of, in my view, sports sponsorship's about brand awareness, of course. It's about building trust in your brand, but it's about the global development of the sport and showing. And I think doing basketball is a bit different. Investing in FC Barcelona, how much money does really come down to grassroots. But I think with basketball, it's genuinely tangible to see how the investment will come down to a grassroots level and actually improve the level, hopefully, of basketball ultimately and
Yeah.
also the awareness of it in Europe. I think being a pretty colonial Brit looking at the world through a colonial viewpoint as we're brought up, basketball, I was amazed, watching the games, and obviously Greece v Turkey is always special, whichever sport it is. But yeah, that was amazing. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's
To be
about
honest,
power
to
of
be
the
to
brand
be
trust and
Yeah, to be honest,
widening.
like, sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
yeah, I mean,
I
I was just
wanted to
repeating
express
myself.
that I love basketball and I love it so much that like any brand, any company that stands behind the basketball is like exact on that moment gains my, let's say, respect in order because like basketball is not treated well, let's say too much. Like we know that it's sometimes second, sometimes third sport based on where you are in the world. But all in all, it's beautiful sport. It's really, really watchable from my point of view. It's really extreme. Action is there, everything is there, and it's been developing piece by piece, and not only in America but in Europe as well. And even NBA players always say that playing in Europe is much harder and much like rules that are different here is much more competitive here rather than playing at NBA because NBA little by little became like a show that you want to attend and like an event that you want to attend rather than just watching a basketball for the game that you love. So that's really great. And on the topic that you mentioned, like it brings trust for the company, and I believe that that is one of the biggest things because at the end of the day, it brings credibility to the brand, and that is something that is really, really hard to measure in the quantitative way. Maybe sometimes in qualitative way you can measure it because you can have different groups and analyze it like that, like how it impacted your decision making and stuff like that. But all in all, it comes down to visibility, credibility, and also what you as a brand bring to the industry regarding the basketball. And I think that you are helping in a way basketball to advance into the new level because this is the way forward. And that's great. I'll remember to ask you about that invites as well in future.
No, no problem. It's in my head, and you've just done a better job explaining the partnership than me, probably. So you can even have 2 tickets, no problem. Bring a friend.
Okay. By the way, is World Championship next year what we have? We have
I know it's the Women's World Cup next year.
it's a Women's World Cup. Okay. By the way, and you are sponsoring PSG, right?
Yeah, we've got to deal with PSG, deal with Barcelona, deal with an esports, and that's understanding, as I mentioned. Our esports customers, as you know, being on the B2C side,
Yeah.
the esports customer.
By the way, for us Georgians, now PSG is one of the favorite teams because you have Huicha Kvaratskhelia, and
Hmm.
so PSG is like a love mark for us for a few years.
I think one of my Georgian friends, did he come 18th in the balloon Ballon
Yeah,
d'Or
yeah,
last
in
night?
pool
One of my Georgian
18,
friends put
like
on.
he was in top 20,
Top
but
20. I mean, look, to be in the top 20 of anything in the world is an achievement. And I think people always thought, oh, we only, when I'm talking about football, or we only play professional football. Like, anyone who's played professional football has achieved far more than many other people. To get into the top 20 in your sport in the world is an amazing feat. So, you know, keep moving forward. You make the top 10.
I think that that is always the understatement. Like, for example, even for Formula One, if you are in Formula One and you are like finishing up like in top, let's say 10, even like top 15, even like you came all this way to Formula One. Like, if you know the story behind how hard it is to get to Formula One, what kind of finances it takes, what kind of talent it takes, like you can appreciate even any, let's say, racer there. But when you like just think, okay, he's in top 20, whatever, what the fuck? Imagine how many players there are in the world and becoming into top 20, even when you are under 25 years old, that's already an achievement from me. And that's already a sign that he will, or anybody in top 20 can win next year or year after or year after. So that is something that we underestimate always within the sports and within how, let's say, how great the sportsmen are. Even for like I'm always saying that for Olympics as well, sometimes we ignore the fact that like they are best of the best from each country, and within the best of the best they competing to be the first one, right? And even when they don't win, they are still an Olympic sportsman. So that title does not go away, and that title does not leave the regalia of the sportsman.
I agree. I mean, I think that's just life, though. I mean, even in our industry, people might not say it. People are competing to get to the top of this industry in what we do, be that in the B2C side or B2B side. I know I've said this a few times previously. I think the problem is people want to in life. And I think I always say Big Brother changed the world in the UK because people thought they could become famous for doing nothing and just that. And I think that's just kind of neglected people's desire to work hard to get to the top. They now think it's a right to get to the top rather than it's bloody difficult and it's bloody lonely if you get to the top.
Exactly. Okay, so back to like let's leave a sport where it is, and we will see more and more in upcoming uh, weeks and months. One thing that I missed to touch upon, that you released the player safety index research results,
hmm
or something like that. I didn't catch the worldwide, but some kind of report. Can you tell me a little bit more about the report? How was it done, and what it represents, and where it's going?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is stage one. It was done in partnership with SBC, and I think there's two titles out for it: the Player Protection Index Report and also the Player Protection Report Western Europe. So it's good to have two names. Everyone has a first name and a surname, so it's fine. I think the idea behind this was actually, and I'll speak totally transparently here. MonXBet may not have always been associated with player protection, but part of what we want to do is engage and show that we are committed to this as a focus for us going forward. So we started in Western Europe with the view that actually Western Europe has held us the torch flame, talking about the Olympics of the standard bearer of maybe player protection within the iGaming industry. So we thought, right, Western Europe, we'll go there first, we'll see what we learn, and hopefully we can, apply that lessons around what we've learned here. And what I actually found, and I was speaking about this in Lisbon last week, but I've had some more time to digest the report since we left. I was talking about the three C's last week: the need for clarity, the need for communication, and the need for consistency. But on the flight back, I thought of a fourth C, and that is confusion. So above the need for clarity, communication, and consistency sits confusion. And that was borne out by some of the findings from the report. 43% of respondents were not happy with the player protection regulations in their primary jurisdiction. 26% said they wanted more clarity. You had operators in Sweden saying they looked at enforcement of breaches of player protection rules to understand the regulation. You had UK operators saying they didn't want to engage with the UKGC because they were scared of looking stupid. And you had Portuguese operators saying they wanted to intervene earlier, but they're not allowed to. And I can understand the viewpoint of the UK operators because I had a PML myself. Many years ago, when I was working at the Softco, the virtual sports company, I wrote to the commission for a point of clarity, and all they sent back to me was the guidance. And I was like, well, if I understood the guidance, I wouldn't be asking for you. So, but you have to understand these are civil servants being paid a civil servant salary. They're not paid to understand it. But then you've got legal language, English legal language, as I call it, which is very difficult to understand and is, I would argue, purposely at times.
Yeah, purposely made.
You could, vague. And, a very good lawyer friend of me said to me once, truth is a flexible concept. And by that, I mean, you could say I'm wearing a blue jumper at the moment, which I am. But you could also say it's a light blue jumper with a black horse. I'm both true. But how you view that, no one's lying there.
Yeah.
It's the truth.
So there is a fine line like for everybody, it might be understood in a different way, and that's where the confusion starts.
Exactly. And I think one of the other findings from the report was 30% of operators provide, if they're working multi-jurisdictionally, they apply the highest standard or the strictest or the most stringent, however you want to call it,
to all other markets.
standard across all their other markets.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about personalization as an industry, that doesn't make sense to me. So actually, we're a big operator. I'm not saying that we're not. And we compete with other big operators. But there comes a point where we all need to sit down together and work together, because every time I look at LinkedIn at the moment, I'm told the black market's going unregulated. And actually, anyone betting in the unregulated market, apart from maybe paying for some of the B2B stands at SBC Lisbon last week, as an operator, we're losing, because that's actually money we're not gaining, and it's actually tax euro that governments are not getting. So I think there has to be a desire to engage, and actually, I believe that regulators are now being seen more as enforcers. And for the Swedish operator to say they look at how the regulation is enforced to understand it's got to be troubling for anyone.
But one but there also.
There's always a but.
There's always a but. It's really hard to get people from these big companies to work in, let's say, to have, like, even though it affects whole industry, even though they are in the same boat, they still, like, they are not that open regarding the engagement with each other sometimes, because I don't know why. It must be a ego thing, most probably, but
I was going to say it's ego. It's ego.
Yeah, like, end of the story there, but I don't want it to go there, but yeah. But most of the time, yeah. And thank you, like, you dropped such a good numbers, like, I didn't know some of them, so now it's from 3C, we are transferring to 4C, and maybe you'll add it to your next quarterly report, the fourth one as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, the next report we're going to do is we're going to Africa. To look at Africa as a region. We're doing a podcast in the middle of November, because obviously Lisbon was so full on for everyone. I don't want this report to be lost, because it's important to me.
Yeah.
I'm one expert. So we're doing a podcast in the middle of November. And this isn't a one-off. I just want to emphasize that point. From my perspective and one expert perspective, this is a long-term commitment, which will lead into what I'm able to tell you in January, but not now. So this is a commitment for us.
I think that we have to commit also on one thing. So maybe, like, we are wrapping up, like, new season by the end of the year, and we will have new season starting up for this podcast next year as well. So at some point next year, when you feel comfortable, come back and let's discuss what happened during the 1 year period in this 1 year. And you will have much more cards to show and much more things to show as well.
Hopefully. I mean, that's my desire, and I believe that will be the case. But, in this crazy world we live in, you never know. I mean, look, that wouldn't be down to one expert. That would be down to me. So
that will be down to you, because even though whatever happens, it happens, but you will be still there. You will be still jumping with both feet into anything that comes to your table. So that will be still interesting, and that will be still awesome. Okay, we are now approaching the time and the sector of the podcast that I really, really love. So we have a tradition here. So the tradition is that previous guest asks next guest blind question without knowing who it will be. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's somewhere in the middle. Let's see what. Let's see how it is. So, last time we had Imedashvili from Hero Picks, and he's a big fan of sports, but still the question is not from the sport, but from personal, let's say it's a personal story. And it's really, really good question in regards that it shows the character. So, Simon, the question is, what was the biggest mistake you did
1 minute, 1 minute.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah,
give me a second.
get yourself ready. Because I already read I remember, but I'm trying not to forget anything that he asked, so
Okay.
I will read
Feel
it
free
out
to
as
forget whatever's needed to
yes.
forget.
Let's go. His question was that first of all he says hello, and his question was, what was the biggest mistake you did in this industry, and what was the takeaway from that mistake, and how that mistake is helping you right now in your decision making process.
Give me a minute.
Yeah,
I need to have a think here.
yeah, for sure.
I'm going to give a little bit of a left field answer here, actually, because it's not just a mistake I've made once; it's a mistake I've repeated, and you should learn from your mistakes. You say, I think the biggest mistake I've made in my career, and it's been a reoccurring mistake, is loyalty. Every time you sit in a job interview, everyone goes, "Oh, what's your biggest strength?" And you say loyalty. I don't anymore. I say it's my weakness because we touched on about how I commit to everything 100%. So I give such loyalty and such desire, and I'm fully immersed, and I'm full on. I'm probably annoying, I'm probably even like evangelical about the companies I work for, and I genuinely put the companies first, before my own personal well-being at times. 10 years ago, my brother passed away, and I've used the last 10 years to really promote and accelerate my career because I've just lost myself and immersed myself in it for whatever reason. And I think, luckily I found my wife in that time, and I'm stepping back a bit. But from that immersion, there's been a lot of pain, because within every company I've been in, up to one expert, I've always had an opportunity to leave. But my desire to be loyal, going back to Amaya, I go back to Amaya when I was at Amaya. I could have left Amaya. I didn't leave Amaya. A month later, I was told that because we'd told her to every company and we were buying every company, there was no job for me. 2 months previous, I'd been offered a job, which I turned down. So actually, the biggest mistake I've made in my career is loyalty, and that's loyalty to companies and also people. I think when I talk about loyalty to people, I've developed something because, believe it or not, I've managed really big teams now. And forgive me if I'm waffling, so I'll tell me to shut up. The hardest thing I've found in my career is dealing with people. And I'm talking about managing people. And I remember many years ago, I was at Terrapin, going back to the start of Nice to Numa. And I asked my sales director, manager, would I make a good manager? And he said, honestly, Simon, I don't know. And, I was like, what do you mean? And he said, there's two things. He's like, Simon, when you're in a good mood, you raise the whole office. When you're in a bad mood, you put the whole office down. And he said, the challenge you're going to have in managing people is some things come so naturally and so simply to you, you really struggle when other people don't get that on your level. And when you're a manager of a massive team making decisions instantly, you don't always have time to explain it because it's coming naturally to you. But actually, part of leadership and management is explaining. So what I developed really was this thing I call depth, which is probably a bit silly, and I'm not going to write a book on it, but it was an ability to learn to delegate and not sweat the small stuff. My friend Peter Nolan, God rest his soul, taught me that. An ability to trust your team and empower them to make mistakes. But I had to learn patience because I didn't understand as
That
well.
is like I'm
And
still
then
struggling.
finally, I believed in honesty. And the biggest disappointments I've had outside of loyalty is from people who haven't adopted honesty and integrity. And as I always used to say when I was managing teams, I'm pretty solo at the moment, although team will come in time. If you make a mistake, just own that mistake and we'll solve it. No one's going to die over this mistake. What I find the biggest disappointment I've had really, apart from the loyalty, is in people who've not owned their mistakes and have lacked integrity at times to cover their own arse. And, again, I've really developed this, I call it depth, delegate, empower, patience, trust, and honesty. And
Mm.
I don't know if that answers the question. I've waffled a little
Yeah.
bit there.
No. It answers it. It tells a really good story, and it also answers what it changed for you and how you approach new things and how you approach the companies. I still struggle with the delegate part because I have to delegate, and I do that because I have to, because I cannot be running around everything. And after I became a founder, it became even worse because as a founder you have yourself involved in like such things that you have never imagined, like starting from legal, ending with the budgeting or stuff like that, even though you shouldn't be involved like on a in corporate world. But all in all, I had one strategy that I always allowed that, how I managed and allowed that. So I made small bets, let's say small bets on the people. And I knew that even if they fuck up small. And when they learned to fuck up small and they learned to make a mistakes and withhold with the mistakes, then their responsibility increased and their projects increased and their things increased. So I had that's like small test, let's say like that, to delegate small things at the beginning and then improve it little bit, because I was always expecting things to go south, and it most of the time it went south, but it was the thing was so that it didn't fuck up a bigger picture.
I mean, in life, I'm probably one of the most competitive people in the world. I want to get on the plane first. I have to do this and do that. But and I want to win. But I've learned more from my failings than my winnings, honestly.
Yeah.
So actually, that's what I used to tell the teams and the people I work with. You know, we learn. You know, if you make a fuck up, you make a fuck up, but own it. And as I said, at times, you know, people who haven't shown the honesty, integrity that I've shown towards them has been disappointing. But you know, as I always say, the sun will rise. They will live their world, and I'll just keep pushing forward. And I always believe, as long as I can look myself in the mirror every morning as a decent human being, I'm pretty comfortable with it.
So next thing is that we have to ask our next guest, Simon. You have to ask next guest what you want to know or what you want to ask to him or her. We don't know.
I think that you've thrown me a bit left field there. I think I'm going to buy myself some time in answering the other questions.
Oh, okay.
Remember,
Before, yeah.
the
So
name on the front of the shirt is always bigger than the one on the back.
yeah. So before you do that, what I will remind our listeners is that SBC Tbilisi is happening in a few weeks. So like remember to come to Tbilisi. Everybody is
I'll be there.
invited. Oh, you will be the Simon there. Okay, come find me and let's have a drink. Of course, I'm
Yeah,
always
definitely. Can we
yeah.
do it after my panel, though? I've just got told I'm doing a
After
panel.
your panel, after my panel, and after everything is
Perfect.
done, like we Georgians always invite for a drink, so that's
I know.
cultural. Yeah, that's
I
a
know.
cultural thing. But never agree for the fourth or fifth drink, because then everything goes south, and you might not remember the previous day. That's the thing from here. Yeah, so it will be in Tbilisi, one of the really, really great countries in order to visit, in order to experience, in order to enjoy. Hospitality is great, everything is great. So fly over, drive over, come here, find me, say hello, and yeah, we will be there. And also before that, Simon will be there as well, so you can meet both of us. So you can kill two
Birds with one stone.
rabbits with two. So it's two birds. In Georgia, we have two rabbits, and I was trying
Okay,
to
there we go.
translate it, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, my question, I think I've always been quite forward, in my opinion, on the next generation of the iGaming styles and iGaming leadership. And I think what I'd like to ask the next person you have on the podcast, and I think they do it, you know, like with the boxers, who's got the best right hook, who's got the best jab. We as leaders now moved us from the bar to the gym. At 6 a.m., everyone was coming in usually to the bar, but now they're going to the gym. What does the next iGaming leader look like? What do they have? What skills and talents do they have to possess that we maybe have struggled with as this generation? So, in a nutshell, what does the next iGaming leader's skill set look like? And if you want to really push them,
I want.
to say which skill goes to which existing iGaming leader, or we don't have this. This is what they need to learn. It's a
Okay.
good question. Am I right? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, it's great question, to be honest. So they will have a hit from the right and from the left as well, because like they need to think about it and they need to remember all the great leaders that there are in the industry. So that's really, really great. I have no words. Like Simon, it was my pleasure. I'm happy that I will meet you in 3 weeks as well and have a drink with you.
Just the two. Just two.
Just a two.
No.
Yeah, just two. After two, I'm going to run after two. But you know what? You know the downside of the being in B2B? You have
Tell me.
too many two drinks. with the different people in the
Yeah,
industry because
I
they are.
remember those days. That's why I went to B2C. That's why
Yeah.
I'm good
B2C is
with it.
B2C is much better. B2C is much better on that side. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Simon, thanks for being here. This was iGaming Accent brought to you by SBC Eurasia. You can subscribe to us in any channel, in any direction you listen to. We are on Spotify, iTunes, not iTunes anymore, like it's Apple Music. We are on YouTube and we are everywhere. See you in 2 weeks, and whoever is coming to see you on SBC Summit, release it. Cheers.